Bonjour et bienvenue à la 6e cérémonie des prix d'excellence du Centre sur les politiques scientifiques canadiennes. Je suis Christina Stahulak du Conseil national de recherche du Canada et je suis aussi la coprésidente du comité des prix de la CPSC. We're joining you from Ottawa, and before beginning the ceremony, I wish to acknowledge that we're on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people.
Merci, Christina. Welcome, everyone. My name is Naveed Aziz, and I'm one of the co-chairs of the CSPC Awards Committee. It is such a privilege for us to honor the winners of the 6th Annual Science Policy Awards of Excellence with all of you today. The CSPC Science Policy Awards of Excellence were designed to celebrate and encourage Canadians from all walks of life as important contributors to finding evidence-based solutions to the complex problems we face as a society today.
This year, CSPC celebrates 3 awards: the CSPC Award of Excellence Youth category, the Exceptional Contribution to Science Policy Award Trailblazer category, and the Exceptional Contribution to Science Policy Award Lifetime Achievement. Le prix d'excellence en politique scientifique catégorie jeunesse reconnaît une personne de moins de 35 ans qui a élaboré une proposition de politique novatrice et convaincante, fondée sur des données probantes qui fera une différence positive dans la vie des Canadiens.
As in previous years, we have received a number of excellent proposals. When we take a look back at some of the previous winners, it becomes very clear why CSPC continues to champion these awards.
The Canadian Science Policy Centre is committed to fostering and recognizing excellence in science policy. As part of its vision to actively engage the youth and build capacity for the future, CSPC launched the first in Canada Science Policy Award of Excellence Youth category in 2013.
Please join me in a big round of applause for the 2017 Science Policy Award of Excellence Youth winner, Sierra Clark.
I think if I want you to take anything away from this talk, I think is that I really wrote this policy proposal because I believe that cooking and heating should be something that sustains us.
This award recognizes an individual under the age of 35 who proposes an innovative and compelling evidence-based policy that will make a positive difference to Canadians.
Please join me in welcoming our 2018 CSPC Award of Excellent Youth category winner, Jessica Kolopanik.
My proposal is a sign of the collective endurance of Indigenous peoples and our refusal to be altogether defined by victimization.
This award seeks to motivate young Canadians to translate their passion and creativity into a well-researched policy proposal which is bolstered by evidence and addresses a complex challenge faced by society.
Please welcome the 2019 winner, Emily D'Souza.
Policy changes when we facilitate dialogue and refuse to accept the status quo. Thank you.
Please help me welcome Amani Sahi.
Une nouvelle catégorie de prix a été lancée par le CPSC pour la première fois en 2019.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the recipient of the first exceptional contribution to science policy, Monsieur Paul Defoe.
Le prix de contribution exceptionnelle aux politiques scientifiques, une autre première au Canada. Cette reconnaissance prestigieuse vise à récompenser une personne qui a contribué de manière exceptionnelle et durable à la communauté des politiques scientifiques canadiennes.
I'm gobsmacked. Ou en français, on dit je suis gobsmacked.
The passion and drive of these amazing young people inspires hope for the future of science policy and is a good reason to celebrate today. Of course, the organization of such an important aspect of CSPC would not be possible without the selfless efforts of many of the CSPC volunteers. I would like to take a moment and acknowledge and thank the CSPC Awards Committee, co-chaired by my colleague Christina, and our volunteers, Hamid Babazadeh, Majid Naji, Brigitte Vien, and Wendy Jo.
Une sélection équitable des candidats ne serait pas possible sans l'engagement et le dévouement de nos incroyables membres du comité des prix. The members of this committee are Alice Aiken, Emily De Souza, Paul Dufour, Kevin Fitzgibbons, Ragwa Gopal, Yves Jacquier, Sandra Noel, Ainsley Ogden, Bonnie Schmidt, Merle Tamtik, and Nipin Vats.
We have two runners-up this year. Nadwa Elbadri is a master's candidate at the University of Waterloo and an engineer in training with the Professional Engineers of Ontario. Her proposal was entitled Evaluation of Microbial Health Risks Facing Migrant Workers in Canada's Seasonal Agriculture Workers Program.
Hello there, my name is Nadwa Elbadri and I'm one of the runner-ups for the CSPC Youth Award. As we gather from all over Canada in a virtual setting, I'd like to start off by acknowledging my physical presence on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples. I want to take this opportunity to congratulate all of the other award recipients and to thank the Canadian Science Policy Centre for honoring me with this award for my proposal titled Evaluation of Microbial Health Risks Facing Migrant Farm Workers in Canada's Seasonal Agriculture Worker Program. Given the unique circumstances of 2020, it's a privilege to have the opportunity to advocate on worker behalf by understanding and finding ways to mitigate the health risks that they face.
The next runner-up is Andrea Reid, who's an incoming assistant professor of Indigenous Fisheries at the Institute for the Oceans and Fisheries at the University of British Columbia. Her proposal was titled Restoring Canada's Pacific Salmon for a Resilient, Socially Just Future.
I'd like to first acknowledge that I, like many of you, am joining this conference from the territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. I've been a guest here for the duration of my PhD, and I'm deeply grateful for all that I've learned while welcomed on these lands and waters. I'm a citizen and proud member of the Nisga'a First Nation in northern British Columbia, who identify as salmon people, and I'm delighted to have CSPC recognize the importance of taking policy action now to protect our salmon stocks at risk, and to do so by creating space for equitable Indigenous inclusion at the decision-making table, ultimately recognizing the roles, rights, and responsibilities of Indigenous salmon stewards. So with that, I'd like to say Tuyuksak Nissim, thank you very much.
Our Youth Award winner this year is a postdoctoral scholar at the University of Guelph, Department of Geography, Environment, and Geomatics, for her proposal entitled Improving Seafood Direct Marketing for Canadian Economic Resilience and Food Security. Please welcome our 2020 winner, Hannah Harrison.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. It's an honor to accept this award from the Canadian Science Policy Centre. I want to offer my gratitude to the Selection Committee, the Policy Center as a whole, and of course to all those who support the development of policy interests in young people in Canada. I'd also like to thank the University of Guelph and the Geography Department, and most especially my supervisor, Dr. Philip Loring, and the incredible students and colleagues that we have in our lab. The policy proposal I submitted this year is a reflection of our collective work and passion toward improving lives and livelihoods in coastal communities around Canada. And I'm really grateful to be working with them and to be inspired by their work and support. Finally, I'd like to thank perhaps the most important people who inspired this policy proposal, the fishing men and women of Canada who work tirelessly in inclement weather and political landscapes to bring nutritious seafood to our plates. I am deeply appreciative to all those who shared their stories with me so that I could understand these pressing policy needs. In fact, in explaining the policy proposal that I've submitted this year, I'd actually like to start by sharing one of those stories with you today. This story takes place on the eastern end of Lake Erie in the town of Port Colborne, which sits at the entrance to the Welland Canal. For over 70 years, the Miner family have been fishing out of Port Colborne and returning almost daily to unload their catch, some of which is actually sold locally at their family's fish shop. A few months ago, though, they returned to port after a day of fishing to find that their unloading zone was suddenly and without warning under construction to make way for a new cruise ship dock. Overnight, their long-standing location to safely unload their fish was blocked off, and they were forced to move to a new port further away from their fishing grounds. While the miners have tried to address these problems with local leadership, they have yet to find a tenable long-term solution. Now, you might feel like this story seems a little bit inconsequential. Just a few fishermen in a small port who need to find a new place to deliver their fish. But this isn't just one story. This same phenomenon of working waterfronts becoming inaccessible to the fishing folks who need them is happening all around Canada, often in the name of high-end waterfront development and tourism. This issue of working waterfronts and supporting our local food producers is a real problem. Canada is the 6th largest seafood exporter in the world, sending over 2/3 of domestically caught seafood into foreign markets. Meanwhile, the fish that we are eating here at home largely comes from imports and depends on supply chains that struggle with traceability and labeling, making it difficult to assess their sustainability and difficult for consumers to make informed choices about the seafood that they buy. While there was already evidence to suggest that these trends threaten the resilience of Canada's fishing industry, the COVID-19 pandemic has demonstrated how fragile this consolidated, high-volume, export-driven seafood industry really is. In March of this year, fisheries around Canada were unable to open due to the global collapse of seafood markets as restaurants and other fresh retail markets ground to a halt overnight. Those fisheries already underway found themselves with nowhere to sell or process their catch, and fishermen struggled to cover the costs of their livelihoods. Meanwhile, as seafood became unavailable from traditional retailers, consumers turned to those local fishermen to try and find access to fresh seafood, resulting in a significant and surprising increase in demand for local seafood products. While some harvesters were able to adapt their operations to meet that new demand, many fishermen were unable to respond due to localized constraints such as restrictive regulatory conditions and a lack of appropriate working waterfront infrastructure to support that direct marketing of seafood to consumers. As a result, fishermen unnecessarily struggled to maintain solvency, and many required significant financial aid from federal and provincial governments. On the other end of things, consumers were unable to get sustainable, locally produced sources of high-quality protein during a critical time of food supply chain disruption. Now, I realize all of this might sound a little bit dire, but there is something we can do. Two things, actually. First, I propose that provincial and federal governments work together to remove or reduce regulatory barriers to direct marketing of local seafood products to local consumers. Make it possible for Canadians to buy and eat our own local seafood. Second, Canada must prioritize its working waterfronts and those who rely on them to bring their products to market, particularly the many fleets of small-scale fishermen who offer us nutritious protein in the times that we need it the most. The tools to approach these problems already exist, such as establishing right-to-fish legislation and prioritizing local ownership and access to working waterfronts. The best choice for Canadians is to eat Canadian fish caught by Canadian fishermen here in Canadian waters. Let's take these important steps to ensure fishing families like the miners always have a home port to return to. Thank you so much.
Last year, CSPC introduced the Exceptional Contribution to Science Policy Award. This award recognizes outstanding individuals who have made significant contributions to science policy and have championed and inspired the science policy community in Canada. Given the extraordinary times we are facing today, the value of recognizing outstanding individuals exercising leadership in integrating science in policy is more important than ever before.
As such, it seems particularly appropriate to celebrate two thought leaders this year. One recognizing a lifetime achievement, and the other a science policy trailblazer. J'invite le PDG du CPSC, Mehrdad Hariri, à partager avec nous quelques détails sur cette catégorie de prix et à annoncer les lauréats.
Thank you, Navin and Christina. Recognizing and celebrating the excellence in science policy has always been on the ambitious list of CSPC programs. Célébrer les contributions exceptionnelles et percutantes de politique scientifique d'innovation. Le prix de contribution exceptionnelle est une première au Canada et cette année, la reconnaissance de l'excellence au sein de notre communauté est plus importante que jamais. Permettez-moi également de remercier les membres du comité de sélection des lauréats et les membres du comité de prix pour leur travail acharné. Now, it is my absolute pleasure to announce the recipient of the Exceptional Contribution to Science Policy Award Trailblazer category, and the winner is Dr. Cara Tannenbaum. Congratulations. Dr. Tannenbaum is the Scientific Director of the Institute of Gender and Health at the Canadian Institute of Health Research. She's also Departmental Science Advisor to Health Canada and Professor and Endowed Chair in the Faculties of Medicine and Pharmacy at the Université de Montréal. As the Scientific Director of the CHR, Institute of Gender and Health, she has leveraged a decade of scientific experience and expertise to provide domestic and international policy leadership on the integration of sex and gender-based analysis in action, or SGBA considerations, into research. Elle s'est penchée sur les structures de soutien au financement, le déroulement, l'utilisation de la recherche pour rendre la science plus équitable et du même coup renforcer la qualité, la pertinence et l'impact de la recherche. In the face of the pandemic, Dr. Tannenbaum co-founded CanCOVID, a novel crowdsourcing platform bringing together science policy communities to collaborate, communicate, and coordinate research for COVID-19. CanCOVID went from an idea to a launch in less than 2 weeks, with broad engagement from universities, industry, and government departments. The platform has 3,000 members and is contributing to briefing notes to provincial and federal departments, state of science reports for government officials, science networking, and research proposals. Dr. Tannenbaum embodies the spirit and impact of a true trailblazer in science policy. Please join me in congratulating Dr. Cara Tannenbaum, the recipient of the Exceptional Contribution to Science Policy Award, Trailblazer.
Thank you. Merci. C'est avec grande humilité que j'accepte cette reconnaissance. À la fois un honneur et un privilège pour moi d'être reconnu par la communauté des politiques scientifiques canadiennes. I'm really humbled by this award. Some people say that the journey is more important than the destination, but other people say, it's definitely the destination and the final accomplishment that matters. But by naming this the Trailblazer Award, you are essentially saying that carving a path for change is what is being valued. Et c'est tout le monde ici qui le fait. J'aimerais donc dédier cette reconnaissance à tout le monde qui se joint à nous aujourd'hui parce que je sais que chaque jour, vous travaillez fort pour avancer les sciences. Trailblazing does not happen on its own. For me, it wouldn't have been possible without my wonderful husband, Don Shepard, and my 4 kids supporting me with their wisdom and guidance as I tested the waters of working in government. And during my journey, il y a quelques leçons que j'ai apprises que j'aimerais partager avec vous aujourd'hui. Lesson 1, be patient, be persistent, and be prepared to pivot when working in science policy. You may not get what you want, but you could almost always get what you need. And at the Canadian Institutes of Health Research, I have Adrienne Moda and Sarah Viebeck and everyone who works on the teams under Tammy Clifford to thank for helping to advance sex and gender-based analysis policy implementation interventions to support female scientists and improve the integration of sex and gender in the content of research. Now, my idea, I originally thought that we should change the application form for researchers to improve SGBA, or sex and gender-based analysis. But after 3 years of that not going through, they taught me that it would actually be more effective to leverage peer reviewers' knowledge and assessments. So we made a peer review action plan, we pivoted, and this is what we did. A huge shout out to the folks at CIHR and my team at the Institute of Gender and Health, Anne-Cécile Defay, Jenna Haverfield, for making science work for women. Deuxième leçon, get your issue on the agenda, literally. You need to get your item on the decision-making agenda for the executive committee of your organization. If it's on the agenda, it goes on the record. If it's not on the agenda, then it stays off the record and it's harder to move forward. Simon Kennedy, le sous-ministre de Santé Canada en 2016, m'a appris cela quand il a demandé à tous les assistant deputy ministers to come to the table. Puis ils leur ont demandé de participer dans notre nouvel programme SGBA Policy Researcher Partnerships that embedded academics in different branches at Health Canada for 1 to 2 years to really change the culture and embed the science of SGBA into policymaking. It's been a huge success. Hats off, merci beaucoup, à Cindy Moriarty and Linda Henderson from Health Canada's GBA unit who made this happen. Lesson number 3, never underestimate the power of relationships and commitments. I am very privileged to work as a departmental science advisor in Mona Niemer, the Chief Science Advisors DSA network, as we call ourselves. And when COVID hit, we asked ourselves at the beginning of the pandemic, how can we accelerate the mobilization of research on COVID into policy? And that's where Can COVID was born. Can COVID is an online communication, coordination, and collaboration platform to connect researchers with each other working on the same COVID issues, but also government decision makers with the scientists who are doing the research. This allowed us to crowdsource science input from scientists across Canada for the COVID task force and the deputy ministers. And Can COVID would not have happened without my colleague and friend and nominator, Sarah Gallagher, who did it with Sarah Viebeck from the Canadian Space Agency. She's the DSA for the Canadian Space Agency. She's a communication and IT genius. Who knew Mark Daly, who knew Vivek Goel, who knew Alex Michailidis, who knew Hallie Siegel and Kimberly Colburn, all of whom formed the startup committee to launch Can COVID. And we couldn't have done it without Maya Yu either, my strategic advisor at Health Canada, who because of her history had so many connections within the Public Health Agency and the leaders on the COVID-19 task force. So my final lesson is that having scientists at the helm of decision-making really does make a difference. Je pense à mon sous-ministre actuel, Steve Lucas. Lui est scientifique lui-même. He's a structural geologist and engineer. Il a publié dans la revue Nature quand elle avait 30 ans. He gets it. He's supporting phase 2 of Can COVID as a model for virtual networking between scientists and government policymakers for other government issues. We hope when COVID's over, we could use it for climate change or water management. Deputy Lucas also agreed to science town halls on COVID at Health Canada. Despite COVID, he's launched a new framework for science and research excellence, working together with me, and he's also vetted the launch of the first Science and Research Integration Network, a ground-up science and researcher network to advance science issues in government. So we need more scientists in leadership positions in government, because that's when you make science better with policy and policy better with science. Encore une fois, je suis très émue de cette reconnaissance. Thank you again. It's been a real team science effort, and I wish you well. I'm really excited. Merci.
Thank you, Dr. Tannenbaum. Congratulations. Now it is my honor to announce the recipient of the Exceptional Contribution to Science Policy Award Lifetime Achievement. And the winner is Dr. Robert Slater. Congratulations. Dr. Slater is currently an adjunct professor in environment policy at Carleton University. He has made a tremendous impact on science and innovation policy over the course of his storied career. Au cours de sa carrière de 32 ans au sein d'Environnement Canada, Dr. Slater a occupé des postes de direction, dont celui de sous-ministre adjoint principal, de sous-ministre adjoint de politique et de sous-ministre adjoint à la protection de l'environnement. Throughout his career, Dr. Slater has significantly influenced the regulatory machinery that protects the environment. One of his biggest files was the policy on acid rain in Eastern North America, a project to which he was dedicated for 17 years, and that resulted in the acid rain agreements and the Canada-US Accord on Air Quality. He chaired the International Joint Commission's Great Lakes Water Quality Board and was instrumental in establishing the National Roundtable on the Environment and the Economy, and the UN University Institute for Water, Environment and Health. Dr. Slater was appointed a member of the Order of Canada in 2009, and for all of his many achievements and impacts, it is an absolute pleasure to award Dr. Robert Slater the Exceptional Contribution to Science Policy Award Lifetime Achievement.
I'm honored that the CSPC has selected me to receive this magnificent award. Hope you can all see that. It's worthy of the effort. Your organization is a unique one, and it did not exist when I was a practitioner in the fine art of operating at the nexus of science and policy. I wish it had. I'd have given my right arm to be able to participate with you in your deliberations. I would have learned a great deal. You've established the means to learn from the collaboration of peers in multiple disciplines, and you are a trusted, independent, non-partisan, inclusive forum which is available to you throughout your career so you can continue to learn. Mehrdad, you and your colleagues have achieved much in a short time. You deserve many thanks for from them and for your constant leadership that has delivered this result. The CSPC alumni will be an incredible force for the future. The organization should be looked upon as a national asset. Occasions such as these prompt reflections, and I have three I'd like to share with you. Firstly, science for the public good is the bedrock for major issues such as COVID-19 and climate change. Scientists from all countries and disciplines have the capacity to arrive at a consensus on the state of both knowledge and ignorance on a particular subject. In so doing, they provide a foundation for their policy colleagues to do the same. But as we have all seen, this can be elusive for them. But the maxim remains, if you don't get the science right, you will never get the policy right. The scientific method is universal. The policy regime is not. The key challenge is to maintain the integrity of the scientific process, which can be subjected to extraordinary pressure. This, I would like to recognize Dr. Fauci. Please stand and be recognized. He is our current hero in that regard, I think. My second reflection is on scientists. I have the highest regard for good scientists, ones who have authoritative views, can generate a broadly based consensus, and can communicate up, down, and sideways. In the environment area where I worked, they were always passionate about their field and dedicated their professional career to little-known species of wildlife, a transient meteorological phenomenon, or determining the ultimate fate of a new nanomaterial. I found them generous with their time and advice and enjoyed their company. My final point is about context. We are all bombarded by the here and now, but acting in the short term can be the enemy of the important. Our Indigenous elders speak to us about making decisions by thinking about the effects 7 generations into the future. When I was teaching, I tried a variation on that by asking my students who had known their great-grandparents, and a surprising number had. They all expected to know their great-grandchildren, and that, of course, spanned 7 generations. I suggested to them they should ask themselves 2 questions about their work life. Firstly, would your great-grandparents be proud of you? And secondly, would your great-grandchildren be grateful to you? By answering such questions, we start to know ourselves better, the ultimate gift we can give ourselves and to others. So with that, let me conclude, and thank you for your attention and CSPC for its generosity. Thank you.
To conclude this event, please join me in congratulating all of our awardees. I would also like to thank everyone involved in the lead up to this award ceremony, including our volunteers and the review committee. Thank you to all conference participants for attending this virtual ceremony.
We sincerely hope that you continue to enjoy the rest of the conference. Before we end, we would like to acknowledge a few individuals who sadly passed away in the last year and have had a profound impact on science policy in Canada and globally.
Thank you.